So if you look up at the moon, it's just there, right? Yeah, we can have this metaphysical discussion and entertain all sorts of metaphysical positions, which could potentially be true. Like, for example, maybe the moon's not physically actually there. Maybe it's an illusion, or maybe it's a simulation, right? Maybe all of reality is a simulation, or maybe the moon is just pure consciousness, or maybe it's some sort of amalgamation of Platonic abstracts, or maybe it is actually physically real and really is there in some sort of particular sense and stuff like that. So we can entertain all these metaphysical stances about what the moon is. But regardless of whichever one of those is true, the moon is going to be there. In fact, even if none of those positions turned out to be true, the moon would still be there. Or if all of them turned out to be true, just so on and so forth, just whatever is the case, metaphysically, it's simply going to be the case that the moon is there. Now, does this mean that we should kind of turn inwards and look at direct experience? Like, you may think, okay, Ethan, are you kind of like pointing out the fact that our direct experience of the moon is there, no matter which metaphysical position is true? But, I'm actually trying to show you something deeper than direct experience. Because here's the thing. A direct experience does not tell you the nature or the status of that direct experience. To really give you an example of what I mean, we could use this desk as a similar example to the moon. Like, okay, this desk is there. And now, again, regardless of whatever metaphysical position is true or not, you still experience this desk as solid, or at least if you were here, you would experience it as solid. So there's this sort of empirical scientific experience of stuff that we have, where we could take out some sort of scientific instrument and zoom into this desk, and you would see all sorts of matter and particles and stuff like that. And again, that is the case regardless of whatever metaphysical position is true, right? You may say, okay, particles are an illusion, or particles are just consciousness, or particles are Platonic abstracts, or particles are simulated, like we live in a simulated reality. But whatever is the metaphysics does not matter here. Because regardless of whichever one of those positions is true, you would still zoom in on this desk and see those particles, right? So we're not trying to argue that the particles are real. We're not trying to argue that the particles are not real. We're not trying to argue that the particles are an illusion. We're not trying to argue that the particles are simulated. No, we're just saying that empirically and experientially, it is simply the case that this desk is made of particles, right? Whether the desk is an illusion, whether the particles are an illusion, whether the desk is real, whether the particle is real, does not matter. Empirically and experientially, it'll still be the case that you experience this desk as solid, and you zoom in on it, and you'll see particles. Whatever the metaphysics is, that's there. Just like the moon is there, regardless of whatever the metaphysics is. You see, so this is where science comes in, right? Like, we use science to explore what is simply empirically or experientially there. This is why science is not the same as metaphysics. Metaphysics is more of a philosophical and spiritual field of exploration. Obviously philosophers explore it differently than spiritualists do. Philosophers will do it through a lot of analytical methods. You'll hear all sorts of spiritual gurus talking about meditation and direct experience and consciousness and all that. But what science does, scientists don't focus on that stuff. They just look at, okay, what's there empirically and experientially, regardless of whichever metaphysical position turns out to be true, right? What's just there? So we zoom in on the desk, what's there? Okay, your empirical direct experience of the desk is that it's solid. And that if you zoom in on it, you'll see all sorts of particles and stuff like that. But people will kind of bring up this fact that, well, no, actually, desks are not solid. They're not just a bunch of particles locked together. It's a bunch of empty space. And people will kind of use this to say that scientists are flawed for saying that reality is a bunch of particles. But that's the thing. Scientists don't actually say that. This is not actually the bedrock of our science. The current bedrock of our science is what's known as quantum field theory. Quantum field theory says that, again, whatever this empirical experiential reality is, whether you want to say it's actually real, whether you want to say it's an illusion, this or that, does not matter. Just whatever it is at least empirically the case that it's made of quantum fields. That's what quantum field theory is. So it's not actually that the desk is made of particles. Yes, it is a bunch of empty space, but the reason it still feels solid is because of fields. Fields apply force. You don't need a bunch of particles locked in place. That's not the only way for an experience of solidity to be there, right? The desk does not have to be a bunch of interlocking solid particles in order for it to be experientially solid. No, it can be made up of a bunch of empirical or quantum fields, because fields apply force. That's what solidity is. It's a type of force. It's a type of pushback. Fields can be there even in empty space. I mean, have you ever done the middle school or I guess elementary school trick of taking, two magnets, and if, each of the ends are turned on each other, they'll push each other apart? There's no solid matter there. I mean, okay, yeah, like there's air particles in between the two magnets, but the fields are not the particles. The fields are applying force or pushback or solidity without the presence of any solid particles, you see? So fields apply force, they apply resistance, they apply pushback, so they apply solidity. So it does not matter if the desk is mostly empty space. Fields can be there even in the midst of empty space. This is like the basis of quantum field theory, that even in purely empty space, such as a vacuum, there's still all sorts of quantum fluctuations in quantum fields. If you want to learn more about that, like if you're interested in science and physics, you can study quantum field theory. That's the basis of it, right? So yeah, okay, the desk, it's a lot of empty space. It's not just a bunch of interlocking solid particles. That's not what creates the solidity. It's fields. Fields create the solidity. Again, regardless of whether the fields are an illusion, right? You could argue maybe quantum fields are an illusion, maybe quantum fields are simulated, maybe quantum fields are just consciousness, or maybe quantum fields are like really there. But whatever your metaphysical position is, again, we can at least say that it's empirically and experientially the case that they're there. Whether they're real, illusory, consciousness, whatever, they are empirically there. So in that empirical context, at least, right? At least in that empirical context, it is correct to say that the reason that the desk feels solid is because of the fields, right? It's made of fields. But notice that your direct experience of the desk does not tell you that. Your direct experience of the desk tells you that it's made of a bunch of solid material and particles, when it's actually not the solid material and the particles that's creating the solidity, right? It's not just solid material, it's a bunch of fields. Particles and material, like particles are just excitations. They're little ripples in quantum fields. That's what particles are in quantum field theory. They're just like little ripples in this field. So the desk, it's not actually like a bunch of solid material creating the experience of solidity. It's a bunch of fields doing that. So notice that even within your direct experience of the desk, your own direct experience about what the desk is within your own direct experience, like that's wrong. It's incorrect. This is why direct experience alone is not reliable, because you can have a direct experience of something, right? You can like see something with your own eyes or embody something with your own consciousness. Like I know like people in my audience do like psychedelics and stuff like that, and I've experimented with them, like I said in the past. Like you can have some sort of direct experience of something profound, but a direct experience does not tell you the nature of the direct experience. It does not tell you the status of the direct experience. And I realize that this example I'm using of the desk, it's not a very profound example at all. Nothing like a lot of the super deep experiences that people can have, but I'm using it as an example to kind of give you a simpler example of what it means to say that a direct experience does not show you the nature of that direct experience, because your direct experience tells you that this desk is solid, at least within the empirical context. It's solid, but actually that's not the case. If we're looking within the empirical context, It's a bunch of fields. So your direct experience is telling you that it's one way, that it's of one nature when it's not. So just because you directly experience the desk does not mean that you know the status of that directly experienced desk. Do you see what I'm saying? So what we're saying is that a direct experience can be wrong even about its own direct experience. Right? Again, we're not arguing for any sort of specific metaphysical position about the nature of this desk. We're simply just looking at the direct experience of it, which is the empirical nature of it. That, again, whether the fields are, or whether the solid material of the desk is there, whether it's illusory, whether it's a simulation or whatever, just it's there, it's solid, and you feel a bunch of solid material there, right? That is your direct experience of the desk, regardless of whichever metaphysical position you adopt. And what we're saying is that, no, even that directly experienced position of there being a bunch of solid material there, even that's wrong. So even if we're looking within the context of the direct experience alone, damned be all the metaphysical positions, those don't matter. We're ignoring those. It's just that even if we ignore all those and look within the context of direct experience alone, even within that narrow context, your direct experience of that context is still misinformed, right? Because it's not the case that it's a bunch of solid material. Yeah, it has solidity, but not because there's a bunch of material there. No, because there are fields there. That's why we need to go deeper than direct experience. We need something that not only tells us what's there, we need something that tells us what is there regardless of the metaphysics and regardless of whatever the direct experience says or doesn't say. So let's look at that moon example again. Maybe you go into some sort of zenned out meditative state and you're no longer directly experiencing the moon. Maybe the moon's not there anymore. Okay, notice that even if the moon just disappeared, or at least your experience of the moon disappeared such that it's not there and it's not an experience anymore, there's still some sort of fact of the matter in that, right? Even if you want to say, all facts disappear or something like that, there's still a there-ness there. Do you see what I'm saying? That is there regardless of whatever the metaphysical truth is, regardless of even whatever the directly experiential truth is. It's there. It's unequivocal. What we mean when we say that a fact is an unequivocal fact is that it survives any and all of the options on the table. Whichever one of the options is true or not true, this unequivocal fact is going to be there regardless of all that, regardless of all the metaphysical options and whichever one of those is true, regardless of any of the experiential options and whichever one of those is true. It's there regardless of whichever one wins or whichever ones lose. That's what we're looking for. That's what an unequivocal truth is, or an unequivocal fact is. It's sort of like an umbrella that's all-encompassing in that it encompasses any and all of the options, such that no matter which one of those options wins, the umbrella is still going to be there, right? It's there unequivocally. It's not just sort of blended in the background with all the other options. No, it's at the forefront. It's there and it remains standing no matter which one of those positions fall and no matter how many of them fall, right? All the metaphysical positions could fall. All the directly experiential positions could fall, but there's still going to be some sort of fact there. And so that's what we're going to look into in future videos. What are some of those unequivocal facts? Because they don't really have anything to do with direct experience. We're trying to get at something deeper here. And it does get really cool. There's a lot of different unequivocal stuff that we can explore. And so, I have not been uploading videos very frequently over the past few months, but that's because I'm doing a lot of work and a lot of documentation on the side with a lot of these topics. And one of the core things of those topics is a lot of this unequivocal stuff. So I've only kind of dug into it vaguely here. Obviously this was not a very clear, very explicit video. This was just sort of a starter on the core of some of that stuff, but it is something to build up over time, and it can definitely help you understand what it means to not just hear something to be true or say for something to be true, but to actually be capable of showing it to be true or demonstrating it to be true, where it's shown, it's there, regardless of whichever metaphysical position is true and regardless of whatever's being experienced or not being experienced, even regardless of whether there's a direct experience at all. There are facts, like unequivocal facts, which can be uncovered, which are independent of direct experience. I know that sounds very mind-boggling and very counterintuitive, like how could there be something that we know to be true without experiencing it to be true, but we'll get into that in the future. So hopefully this was clear enough for now as just kind of laying a vague foundation for this stuff. If not, let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you all next time. Create a nice day.